Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Sunday night, March 11th. It's coming up on 10 o'clock Eastern Time as we start to focus attention on Noreaster number 3 that is moving up the East Coast, the third one in 10 days. And I pushed the live stream back to 10 o'clock because I figured this way we at least will have enough of the new NAM model and a few other things to look at to see if we can get some clues as far as where this is all going to take us over the next couple of days. So first off, I want to start off with my snowfall prediction map, which seems to have now disappeared. Let me see if I can find it. And unfortunately, it has gone by the wayside. So let me see if I can find it again. This is really ridiculous. All right, give me 1 second here, folks. I apologize for the delay. It was there a minute ago. It disappeared on me, so I'll have to just bring it up again. In the meantime, why don't we take a look at least what's going on with respect to watches and warnings tonight, because we actually have a fairly busy map in the eastern part of the United States, at least. And we've got winter storm warnings up tonight across much of Kentucky, away from the northernmost and southernmost areas, but an east-west swath across the state. Winter weather advisories surround that into northern Tennessee, extreme southeastern Missouri, southern Indiana, southern Illinois, and then they run eastward into Virginia and North Carolina. And we also have some winter storm warnings up there for western Virginia and southeastern West Virginia down into a narrow band in the mountains of western North Carolina. Could see up to half a foot of snow in some areas there. Winter storm watches are up from just east of New York City, so Nassau and Suffolk counties on Long Island, and everywhere east of the New York State, Connecticut, Massachusetts line. All of Massachusetts, including Boston, all of Connecticut, Rhode Island, including Providence, the southernmost Vermont, all of New Hampshire, and into Maine. So definitely very, very busy with regards to this next weather system. This third nor'easter, by the way, a little bit different from the first two. Both those systems had their impacts in different areas and in different ways. Of course, the first nor'easter, it was wind, rain, and coastal flooding that was front and center. Then the second one, and there was some snow with the first one in elevated areas. The second one was a big snow producer. It was a more compact storm. Coastal flooding was a problem, but less so, still a problem nonetheless. And we had those heavy snows of 2 foot plus. This one is going to be more for the coastal areas and less for inland spots, unless we get some kind of shift at the last minute, which is not impossible. But it still has yet to play out. So we are going to look at this one front and center now and take a look at what's happening with respect to the radar. So I will pull that up here. And you can see we've got a fairly impressive area of precipitation moving across Kentucky and through southern Indiana, southern Ohio, southernmost Ohio, right near the Kentucky line. And then you've got rain that extends over the Carolinas, starting to build up and push up northeastward to southern Virginia and beyond. We are waiting for that secondary low really to develop. Here's the view from the northeast, and much of the northeast is quiet tonight. No big surprise there. The southern flank, you start to see some of that rain that you saw on the other radar shot. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to do like 10 things at once here, and I'm not succeeding very well. But let me bring up the last radar shot that we have. It is actually on the eastern flank of this. You can see that there's a line of heavy downpours that are moving across the Gulf states, right there across the Florida Panhandle and now into eastern Georgia. So it's out of this that we're going to get the energy from the north is going to be swinging around and getting involved with all this. Low pressure moving into Tennessee is going to redevelop along the North Carolina coast in short order, and that will become the primary player up the East Coast. That is the one that is going to do what it does and put down the snow amounts. Now, here is my forecast map. I didn't really change it from yesterday, but just to remind everybody of what I'm going for, I think this still is a pretty fair assessment of the situation, where that dark blue line from there east, we're talking 4 inches or more. That includes areas probably a little bit more aggressive in this particular flank, maybe slightly more aggressive than some of the models indicate. 2 to 4 as you go further west, you get to the New Jersey-Pennsylvania line, and that's where the back edge of this. There's going to be a sharp cutoff, and where this sharp cutoff is remains to be seen. Now to the east, the purple line, that is the border of 6 inches or more, and I have that covering through most of Connecticut except the extreme west, most of Suffolk County. The eastern part of Suffolk County I have in a zone of 8 or more, as I do southeastern Connecticut, Rhode Island, and eastern Massachusetts. So I'm going for at least 8 in the Boston area for those of you who are watching me from there tonight. Now, I think at this point we can bring the NAM up and we'll take a look at what it does. Let me also tell you, by the way, the SREF model, which is the Stony Brook model, is very wet and very bullish when it comes to snowfall. I mean, it would have 6-inch plus snows back even west of New York City, and if you cut New Jersey in half from north to south, it would have the 6-inch line going pretty far west of the Garden State Parkway. Now, I don't know if that I would necessarily use that as a in terms of trying to shape my forecast. However, the fact that the SREFs have really held on strongly is pretty indicative of, it's a bullish signal for sure. Now, here's the new NAM, and we only have it out to 9 o'clock tomorrow night. So there's your secondary low off the North Carolina coast. It's pretty far out, actually, on this run, and we're just at the point where the low is turning north-northeast and northward. One of the things, this is at, again, 9 o'clock on Monday night. The low is sitting well east of the North Carolina coast. Precipitation is just beginning to back in along coastal areas. I'm wondering, I haven't seen enough, but I just want to just jump back one run to the 18Z. So you can see the precip here on the 18Z versus what we just saw is a little bit further to the northwest on the earlier run, at least up until that point. So this is the new run. This is the old run. Okay, here's the new one and the old one. The low center, I'm going to make sure that I got the right one. One of the things that the model was doing, and this is something that it did in the last couple of storms, the isobars get stretched, and is the low center out pinned closer back to the coast, or is it the low that's near the triple point to the east? Is that going to be the more important center? And I'm a little right now at this stage. I'm a bit inconclusive on this. So I'll take you through the old run, and here's what it did. You see how the low center actually, even though it's out to the east for the same time frame, then it moves straight north or even west of north at this point. And the reason why it does that is because at this stage, it's reacting to the upper air jet stream that's swinging around and trying to catch that southern stream system and pulling it back westward. This is what happened, by the way, in the January storm. We had a similar situation with the streams attempting to stay separate, and at the last minute, the models began to see the fact that the stronger northern part of the jet stream was going to basically pull that southern shortwave closer to it, and it tries to do that here. This is on the last run. That's why you see that move that's almost north-northwest for a few hours and brings the low back closer toward the New Jersey coast before it lifts on out to the northeast and east of Cape Cod, which is how the upper feature here behaves. as we move this through time. So this is by Tuesday afternoon. The trough is almost east-west at this point. So the new run, we can take a look at the new run here and see what that does by comparison. We'll just give it a second while it loads. Excuse me. I get to this point of the night, sometimes my energy level is a little bit on the low side. Why is this not loading? It's not doing what it's supposed to do, so let me try this again. There we go. So we only have out up to 1 o'clock. But let's take this as far as we can, and I'll back it up, and you can see how these streams function. There's the shortwave trough back in Nebraska Saturday evening, swinging and dropping southeastward to where it is now, in through western Tennessee and Kentucky. It's pretty well developed. The northern shortwave trough is getting involved, and then to the east, east of Nova Scotia, you have the remnants of Wednesday's coastal storm and the upper air feature with that beginning to pull away to the east. And that's what allows this room to try and move up the east coast. But again, we are only as far as 9 p.m. Monday night. So I'm going to bring it back to the surface. We're going to have to come back to this as soon as these maps. Oh, there we go. So here we are now. We've got a few more hours in. And let me show you here. So we are at, this is 19Z is 3 p.m. Now we're at 5 p.m. Monday. So snow develops over Long Island probably after about 8 or 9 o'clock. And you can see those dark blue snows start to expand westward. By 2 in the morning on Tuesday, it's snowing through a good chunk of central and northern New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. The darker blues are right along the coast, and the really dark blue is touching eastern Long Island. So there's your low center here, a fairly deep low, 977 millibars. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a strong storm for sure. So now we wait to see. The prior run took it a little more northwest for just a few, during the early morning hours before it shoots it out to the east. Let's see if this run does it again. Okay, so why don't we look at precip amounts, total accumulated precip. This is through 2 a.m. Tuesday, and the darker blues, the first darker blue is a half an inch of liquid. It looks like you've got 3 4/10 of liquid that has fallen on Long Island at this point. But back to New York City, it looks maybe at about 1/10 of an inch or so, and even lesser amounts as you go to the west. So it looks like we're going to need a little more time for this model to play out a bit. So let me come back. I'm going to come back to you guys. Let me just center this on the surface. And this is at 2 a.m. on Tuesday, and there's the old run. So the low looks like it's maybe a little bit south of the old position, just a little bit straight south of the older position. That could be just a function of it being an hour or two slower. We'll find out when we get the rest of the run to come in shortly. So I think at this point, if you're just jumping on, let me just once again, I'll bring up my snowfall forecast map, and then I'll come back to you guys on the board for some questions. But here we have it. Again, I did this yesterday. I really haven't changed it very much. 8 inches or more, eastern Long Island, eastern Connecticut, Rhode Island, and the eastern half of Massachusetts. Then you start to bring the amounts down as you go to the west. The 6-inch line goes into western Connecticut, except the extreme west, and also into about the Nassau-Suffolk line. Then we go to 4 inches or more possible for the Hudson Valley east of the Hudson, down to about New York City and coastal New Jersey, and then lesser amounts as you start to go to the west from there. And of course, I'm allowing for a track error of about 60 miles. So if the low, however many miles the low shifts westward, you can push those snow lines back westward, or if it shifts eastward, you can push the snow lines to the east. I'm fairly confident that the area that I have for 6+ and for 8+ is I think that's going to work. In the areas west of that, it's a little tougher to figure because of not really knowing where is that westernmost cutoff going to be, because oftentimes in these storms, those cutoffs of the precip are pretty sharp, and you can go from nothing to 6 inches in a very, very short distance. So I'm going to express the confidence for the 6-inch plus area for where I have it. Not sure about the areas out to the west. So I'm running through some of your thoughts. Misty on Facebook, Timothy Veltman, even Albany goes all the way to 22. That must have been one member on the SREF. They brought it to 22 inches up in Albany. I mean, I can't, I'll pull it up off screen here. Those of you who don't know what the SREF is, it's a compilation of several models. Stony Brook University comes out with this, and it plots all those models on a graph, and we could for various points, and we kind of take a mean position, the mean amount of what all those models produce, and you can actually look at any set by itself or all the models all together or any one model. But what you're referring to, Timothy, is I look at Albany on the total snow for Albany on the SREF. The mean at Albany is 8.91. The highest member gives it almost 20. The lowest member gives it only half an inch. But just to give you perspective, the SREF model gave New York City 7.9 inches. It gave Islip on Long Island 12 inches. That's in central Long Island. Hartford, it gave, or just east of Hartford, it gives 14. And for Boston, it gives 17. Okay, that's the mean of all 26 members. Philadelphia, it gave a little over 4. That's down from earlier. The other areas are about the same, so it looks like it was a little less on the southern flank. It gave Atlantic City close to 6 inches. So that is a pretty interesting development with respect to seeing 6 inches being there down in Atlantic City. And this is a wet snow again. The temperatures are going to be close to the freezing mark. It does fall at night, so I would suspect that it will accumulate on all surfaces. You might get the temperature to drop down to 31 or 30 in some places. But I think you're going to see roadways get covered if it certainly snows hard enough. Joshua Pan, I know you're trying to get this into D.C. It's kind of hard because of where the coastal low is developing and it moves out straight east. That there is going to be a bit of a dry hole from northern Virginia on up into the Delmarva Peninsula with this, and perhaps even to parts of southern Pennsylvania. So that makes it a bit problematic for your area. So I don't think that that's going to change very much on certainly not on this model run. Patricia Patrolak, I'm not catching a cold. I'm just very tired at this stage of the night. All right, let's bring up the NAM again. Let's see if we've got it a little bit further. Okay. When I do these live streams at work, my energy level is a lot higher. But when I'm home on the weekends, by the time we get to about 10 o'clock at night, I have to tell you, I'm ready to call it a night at that point. So we last left you with the NAM run at 2 a.m. So we should have a few more, and we do. And there's your low. You see, it just kind of inches along here. We're now at 8 in the morning on Tuesday. The back edge of the snow is at about New York City, snowing over Long Island, the Hudson Valley, and all of Connecticut. The dark blue heavy snow in eastern Massachusetts and still touching eastern Long Island. So that's as far as we have now when you're up to 8 a.m. So let's see how much accumulated precip it has. And I think at this point I could probably go to the tighter map view. It looks like this run is maybe a little further east. The half-inch line on the old run was actually west of the New Jersey coast, and you could see how tight this is. This is why I'm more confident on the eastern flank than I am on the western flank, because of how sharp the cutoff is. It looks like it gives 2 to 3 tenths of liquid just east of New York City, but that half-inch line is right along the Nassau-Suffolk line. So it kind of runs where I have that 6-inch plus line. And then you can see the heavier amounts over eastern as you go further into eastern Long Island. But it's less than the prior run. Now, there's going to probably be a few more hours of precip to add to this. So these are not the final amounts given where the back edge of the snow, but you can watch how the precip evolves. And you can also see that hole that I was talking about in northeastern Virginia and in southern Maryland that develops because of the coastal low. Look where all the moisture with the coastal low is. It's way out to the east. We'll put the snow map up. We'll see what the snow map has to say. I'm not comfortable with the snow maps, using the snow maps as tools here because they didn't work very well as a whole in the last event. I think it's probably better to use the total precip and then figure how much you think that precip, how much of it do you think is going to fall as snow. And I think that's a much better gauge. So I feel safe with my forecast based on what I'm seeing so far. Here's a close-up view at 8 a.m. Tuesday. The back edge of the snows to about New York City. And you can see these darker blues, especially in eastern I'm thinking southeastern New England, from Boston down to Cape Cod, into Rhode Island, and maybe touching eastern Long Island, are going to wind up doing the best out of this. And now we're at 11 a.m. The low is beginning to move away to the northeast, fairly deep. Strong northerly winds, northwest winds behind it. The snow is now ended at New York City at this point, still snowing on Long Island and in Connecticut at 11 a.m., but it probably will end shortly after that. So the total accumulated precip at this point, again, now it hasn't updated past. I want to add at least the next 3 hours. But that'll bring probably some of those amounts up over Long Island and western Connecticut, maybe the easternmost areas of the Hudson Valley, back to about New York City. Let's look at the upper air and take a look at what maybe that could give us a clue as to what's happening here with regards to the system from the south. So I'll back this up. And you can see that southern stream system. Look how far south it gets before it starts to turn. See how it drops into northern Georgia and South Carolina, and then it just kind of gets absorbed. That northern stream trough comes in, and you've got this upper air feature that forms east of the Delaware coast. The southern stream system never really quite lifts up. It actually gets ejected more east and gets strung out to a large degree, and you have this upper low that forms east of the New Jersey coast that eventually lifts up to the north and goes negative there, and you got the trough is east-west here by late Tuesday morning, with the upper air system in the north in eastern Michigan, and then the coastal system that's just southeast of the Cape. The surface low is going to be probably near or just to the east of the center of the upper low that's offshore. And if we pull up the surface map, you can see how it matches up. And there you have it. So it's almost right underneath where that upper low is indicated. And we could probably just kind of, it hasn't added any more beyond 10 a.m. Tuesday. But I think I've seen pretty much enough to suggest that I'm going to leave my forecast as it is. I'll bring it up one more time. Let's bring up that forecast, the snow forecast that I have. And you can see it here. I'm feeling pretty good that where I have the purple line from there east, 6 inches or more, 8 inches or more, eastern Long Island and southeastern New England. That western part, we might want to pull that a little bit further to the east and tighten it up a little bit so that we'll go from 4 inches or more. I'll leave that alone for New York City, but maybe that western edge might need to be pulled a bit further to the east at this point. I want to look at what the other models do. And by the way, there's still plenty of time for this to shift again in either direction. So as always, we're going to be fluid in our forecasts until we get at least to late tomorrow afternoon. But I'm feeling I don't think I'm going to change this very much overnight and into tomorrow morning. The other models are fairly close. The European, I'm not even paying too much attention to because it just doesn't seem to be working very well lately with these with any of these systems. It did not work well at all. The NAM has been much better and continues to be front and center. I said this a few times in the last week. And now, once everybody figures out that the NAM is the go-to model, that's going to be at the point where it's going to stop working. So the question is whether we're at that point now. Stephen Lyons from Canada, good to see you here. Won't be long for fishing season. That's correct. One of these storms is going to be the last one, and let's hope that. Honestly, I got to tell you, and I said this on my Facebook Live earlier, and I will say it here as well. I really kind of hope that this winds up being further out to sea with much less of an impact because these last two Noreasters, we still have people that are without power since the first Noreaster back 9 days ago. So the second one was insult to injury. Now we will have the third one, which I think of the three storms, this one will probably have the smallest impact. It won't be, there'll be some impact. It won't be impact free, obviously. There will be some impact, but this should have the smallest impact of the three. Winds are going to get strong and gusty along the coast. I don't think that they're going to get too crazy inland. We are going to see probably some coastal flooding, but because we are now away from the full moon and not quite to the new moon, which is next Thursday, that coastal flooding will be mitigated to some degree. So that's a positive, and we may only have one tide cycle to worry about. The ocean front hasn't been too bad through all of this. The bays have been much more problematic. The northwest wind over the last few days from Friday and through the weekend has been a good thing because at least it finally was able to push some of the water that's been trapped in the bay areas and pushed it out to the east. So I know Andrew Pinero, Dan Kumar, with his forecast this morning, did the 1 to 3, 3 to 6 thing. And I was perfectly, I have no problem with that particular forecast. I certainly think you can make arguments for lower numbers in most areas, and I think you could make arguments for higher numbers, especially as you go east. So I was perfect. I saw his forecast this morning. I was perfectly okay with it. When it comes to these sorts of things, it's all up to our own personal interpretation. So there's no real right or wrong answer. And actually, we won't know what the right answer is until after the event is over with. So we just have to really wait. Billy Johnson, good to see you here. I do also hope that this is the last hurrah, and I hope it underperforms what the models are forecasting because I'm tired, okay? This is going to require me to have another overnight tomorrow night into Tuesday, and like I said, I'm beat. You want the best case scenario for snowfall for Danielo Yakubov for northeastern New Jersey. You got to get this thing to pull west by a good 60 miles, and that'll get you into the 6-inch plus band. When the weather calms down, we can take a look at Nova Scotia. Yes. You know what? I think somebody might be. Let me take a look how this is going to play. I honestly, when it gets like this, I don't always remember to look. And I know I think there was a big storm off affecting parts of Europe as well. And I haven't even had a chance to look at that. So let's see what the NAM does. So this actually brings some snow to rain. You can see where the low goes. It comes northeastward, winds up southeast of the Gulf of Maine. Maine gets it. New Hampshire gets it. East Massachusetts, Rhode Island, eastern Connecticut to eastern Long Island, I think is going to be the prime spot for this when this is all said and done. Let's I'll bring up the total precip. We should have it out far enough here. And I'll bring up the tight view. So there's your half-inch lines. It really didn't change any much. Looks like 3 or 4/10 back to about New York City, half an inch into Nassau County, 3/4 of an inch to west central Suffolk County eastward. And look how tight it is. You got inch. Look, eastern Long Island getting into 1.5 inches, 2-inch plus 2 and 3-inch rainfall liquids being generated for southeastern Mass. So, this could certainly imply for somebody getting 2 feet out of this out in parts of southeastern Massachusetts. So it looks like, it seems to me like that's where, that's going to be the big bullseye bonanza as far as the snow is concerned. And I'll jump up. Let's look at Nova Scotia. We'll go to southeastern Canada. And let me try that again. There we go. So there's the precip amounts for southeastern Canada through later Tuesday afternoon. 3/4 of an inch to an inch in the southwestern part. And as far as the snowfall is concerned, at least through the afternoon. So it actually does produce, these are in centimeters. So it does produce some 15 centimeter amounts. And of course, you can see what it's doing in the Cape. So we might as well go back to the northeast view so we can take a look at the snowfall forecast map. And there you have it. So I don't think this is, you see how low the amounts are as you go to the west, and then you start to pick it up across Long Island, eastern Long Island, and again, eastern Massachusetts. Boston sitting in a great spot here, I think. Southeastern Mass, back to about Providence. Looks like there'll be a band of 1 foot plus snows for that part of New England, extending into southwestern Maine to about Portland and to southeastern New Hampshire. Lesser amounts as you head west. Notice west of the New York state line, you go into the Hudson Valley, you start to get into the several inches being forecast. And by the way, this is what the model is forecasting across Kentucky, into southern West Virginia, and into the mountains of western Virginia and western and even into central North Carolina. With that low pulling to the east, that does pull down some colder air into southern Virginia and North Carolina. So that will probably increase the threat for snow in those areas, assuming that the NAM has it correct. And you know what? Like I said, the NAM has done pretty well. Well, you know what? We can look at the 3K. I forgot about that because the 3K has been really kind of crazy bullish. All right, did I just lose? This is wonderful when you have no control. Oh, God. No, there it is. So let's bring that up. We'll bring up the 3K. Maybe that's out far enough. The 3-kilometer NAM, which some forecasters really like to use, was a little bit more aggressive today at times, depending on the model series. But it doesn't seem to be, at least on the snow map. Let's look at the precip map. I think that's the better measure. Even on the precip map now, this is through 4 a.m. It has gotten much weaker. So let me see what it's doing. The 3-kilometer was so bullish for so long. So there's your low on the 3-kilometer NAM. Runs out to the east, then turns north and northwestward. You can see where the heavy snow is. But we only have out till 6 a.m. on Tuesday, but there's not very much west of New York City. You have to really go to eastern Long Island, eastern Connecticut, eastward. And, of course, southeastern New England gets hit pretty hard. I don't know when this is going to finish because sometimes this thing runs behind the regular NAM on tidbits, tropical tidbits, which if you haven't heard me say it before, it's probably one of the best websites around when it comes to looking at weather models, tropicaltidbits.com. Okay, and we thank Levi Cowan so much for letting us use this. He's very, very generous from that respect, and we most appreciate it. John Schultz has his boat in the water and ready to go. Well, good for you, because before too long, but hope these gales haven't and the wind hasn't caused you too many problems by getting it in too early. All right, so let's just leave it there. We'll call it a night at this point. This is what we're doing tomorrow. I will, if I can, I'll try and throw up a live stream tomorrow morning before the lunchtime hour. It's good to see Peter Bicker on here, whose main job apparently is to find whatever model is not showing a snowstorm and pointing it out for all of us. Thank you, Peter. I really appreciate it. He does that function on my Facebook page as well. But I'll try and do a live stream tomorrow morning if I can when the new models hit. And for sure, tomorrow evening, there'll be a Joe Cioffi show tomorrow night at 9:15. Look for our regular live stream on weekdays at 6 o'clock Eastern time. All right, folks, have a great whatever's left of your Sunday, which is only a little less than an hour and a half. We'll see you tomorrow.